Hello. Thank you all for coming out tonight to the Successes of Pivotal Change in Homelessness 2021, Northumberland. Tonight's event is a chance for you all to get some insight into how some of the local services that support the unhoused have managed to pivot during the pandemic to continue to operate and offer that support. But it's also a chance for us to talk about the opportunity within this crisis. When you have to change everything, you get a better sense of what is essential and what isn't. With new constraints, you have a chance for new designs, supports, and directions. It isn't easy to deal with constant ongoing change, and few of the lessons we've learned this year were obvious in the moment. But I know that our team has found that reflecting on how far we've come gives us hope and excitement for how far we might go. So please join us in this review of our COVID year, share some of our gratitude and hope, and share some of your own experience and expertise with us. We have a great lineup for you this evening. First, we're going to start with Ann Newman, the Executive Director of Transition House. Ann?
Hello, I'm Ann Newman, the Executive Director of Transition House, and I'm very happy to see you here today. Thank you for joining us. We are here to talk about homelessness. As we know, there is a housing shortage across the country, and this presentation will focus on the effects that are seen here in Northumberland County. Transition House Coalition of Northumberland has been working for a couple of decades in this, but has recently opened in the last 2 years to be a low barrier emergency shelter. As the pandemic hit, there were opportunities for evolution in our services where we ended up offering overflow services in motels and a transitional housing program that is founded in Port Hope. We as an organization are managed by a board of directors and sort of following the strategies federally of a place called home and reaching home. We keep up with provincial strategies, affordable housing in Ontario, community housing renewal strategies. And here in Northumberland, we work with the Northumberland County Affordable Housing Strategy, the Northumberland County 10-year Housing and Homelessness Plan, and we support the Homelessness Coordinated Response Team, which is HCORT, in managing clients over time. We just completed an enumeration in Northumberland County. It was managed through the county staff, and the community supported them in counting the homeless population in the county, and we will hear those results soon. In 2018, this was done before, and we are recounting to determine if that number has increased. And we've also been looking at acuity levels through an assessment tool called the SPDAT. So you'll hear more about that as you go through. You'll hear from our staff, and you'll hear from Northumberland County, Sarah Tanner, and also from a couple of our community partners. So at the end, we'll have a chance for question and answers, and we look forward to spending the next hour with you. Jeff?
Thank you so much, Ann, for that great introduction. Coming up next, we have Sarah Tanner from Northumberland County. Sarah, take it away.
Hello, I'm Sarah Tanner. I'm the Community Services Manager at Northumberland County, and part of my portfolio is working with homelessness system partners. I work regularly with Transition House on a range of things, both operational and strategic. And part of my interest today is to talk about the alignment of homelessness services. I think as we progress and as we move through COVID into a recovery model, it's even more important that we start to think about how we align our services and what does that actually mean. I think we're sort of moving from a partnership and a collaborative model to understand that the priority really needs to be alignment. So within Northumberland, we have our housing and homelessness plan, and there was an extensive amount of consultation and input from community members and agencies about what was really priority for us over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of housing and homelessness. We have our affordable housing plan, and more recently we have our community safety and wellbeing plan. These are plans that are actually mandated by our government, and we work really hard at the county to ensure that we bring people on board and we talk about things, our strategic priorities, where our opportunities lie, what we can improve on. And this is an area where in homelessness, we need to ensure that we align. We need to look at aligning our language. What does homelessness mean? What age groups are we talking about? What locations are we talking about? What services are we talking about? But perhaps more importantly, we need to start thinking about, okay, then, so how do we align our priorities? And that's what I just want to mention. So at a strategic level, we can all use the words like accountability, transparency, but at an action level, where are we aligning? Where are we aligning what we mean when we're talking about supporting vulnerable adults in our community? Are we all on the same page in aligning how we want to do that? Now, this doesn't mean we all have to do the same thing at the same time, but it does mean it's going to be a lot more effective if we can agree how we're going to do it and what are our goals. An example of this for our community safety and wellbeing plan is not only did we align our goals across the 4 priorities, one of which is homelessness and housing, but we also looked at the actions. So not what is just that visionary statement of what we would like to see for Northumberland, but what is it that we're actually going to do about it? And how are we going to know when we've done it? What is it that we're going to measure? And we've tried to initiate a plan here where we're actually looking at, there's a lot of assets already in our community. We know that we have a range of experts in our community, community agencies and residents who know a lot about these things, have a lot of experience and a lot of interest. And there's already a lot of work going on. So let's not duplicate, let's align those priorities and work with those groups, whether it's a network group or a committee or a board, those people that are already doing that work. And let's enable them to start to see homelessness as a priority and those actions that we want to take. Those actions that we want to take to ensure that people stay healthy, to ensure that people stay safe, to ensure that homelessness is a priority, to ensure that when there are opportunities, we're able to share them. We recently had some funding, provincial funding, called Social Services Relief Fund, and this was given to us through the province, or allocated to us through the province, due to COVID and the restrictions that COVID brought specifically for people experiencing homelessness. In Northumberland, we actually set up a small group, including Transition House, who took a very central role in looking how we could allocate that money, allocate those resources. We didn't ask for people to bid on it. We didn't ask for people to put applications and proposals in. We got the subject matter experts together and we aligned our priorities and determined how we could best allocate that funding to have the biggest impact for people locally. This meant that we were much quicker. We were able to pivot very quickly. We could respond to things. We could change things. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Did we learn every time? Absolutely we did. And we still have lots of learning to do. However, the biggest learning that we had was being able to align our priorities there and talk about where we wanted to invest. We actually had an impact. How are we measuring that impact? Of course we are. And as I say, we've still got a lot more to learn. However, I want to leave this by just saying that across the community, alignment with our data, alignment with our resources, alignment with our training, alignment with our priorities, if we can start to work on that and ensuring that we're able to recognise when we're aligning, recognise when we can align differently, when we can improve it, we'll actually start to see a quicker impact, a more responsive impact, more opportunities to involve people with lived and living experience, more opportunities to grow the services that we offer. And I think Transition House is really demonstrating an ability to lead this in the homelessness field. The real reach that they have with their wellness services, outreach, when they're looking at covering overflow, emergency sheltering, responding to COVID issues, responding to less numbers being able to be in the actual shelter, but offering services elsewhere, and just aligning with those priorities in the community, the opportunities with their partners, and the ability of their staff. So I'm really pleased to be able to talk today on alignment, and I hope that there's something that you can take away from that.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was a great overview of what's been happening at the county level and all of the ways that we are in alignment and growing in alignment. In terms of what we do at the shelter at Transition House, we're going to turn now to Chantel Niles, who's our shelter manager, to go over some of the things that are really working well right now. Chantel?
Good evening. I'm Chantel Niles. I am the Emergency Shelter Services Manager here at Transition House, and I've been with Transition House for the past 3 years. I was a part of the reopening. Transition House offers emergency shelter for those individuals experiencing homelessness in Northumberland who are in need of supports to obtain permanent housing. As a low barrier shelter operating under the Housing First philosophy, our staff are working diligently to connect individuals to services available within the system. We offer these supports in our regular emergency shelter setting. However, due to a lowered capacity, we are also providing support in our motel overflow program and have been throughout the course of the pandemic. Transition House reopened in October 2018 after a 10-month closure. Although the name remained the same, the focus of services changed. We were no longer an environment providing transitional housing for families. We reopened as a low barrier co-ed shelter for individuals 18 and above. At that time of reopening in 2018, operations began with an entirely new team of staff, management, and at that time, an operational board. Our board was extremely supportive and engaged in the initial setup. It wouldn't be out of the norm to find our board chair or the treasurer doing an overnight shift as we set up. By 2020, we had developed a strategic plan which guided us towards a strategic governance board versus an operational one. This change provided opportunity for staff empowerment, training, and leadership within the system as the organization moved forward strategically with a focused operational plan. In this time, we have also grown to become a learning facility where we host student placement opportunities for students studying in nursing, community and justice services, and social work. My role at Transition House is to ensure relevant and responsive service delivery through a team of shelter staff. This has been made possible through the development and maintenance of our partnerships with our amazing community partners who can also be found in our community and within the homelessness system. These partners include Northumberland Hills Hospital Community Mental Health Services and the ACT team, Forecast, Coburg Police, Community Paramedicine, Public Health, PARN, CARIA, and the Community Health Centers of Northumberland. We are excelling in our commitment to coordinated access and continue to align with local and higher level strategy while also supporting client need. To enhance these client supports, we've begun the development of supporting people with lived experience to have a voice in our service delivery. As we move forward, we will continue this engagement through peer support and adding these voices to our strategic governance moving forward.
Thank you, Chantel. That's an excellent overview of what we're doing at the shelter. Unfortunately, we do have a reduced capacity at the shelter due to COVID, and so we've had to go into an overflow program. And Holly Ferguson is here to give us an overview of what's happening there, what it is, our successes and opportunities.
Thank you, Jeff. I am Holly Ferguson, and I'm the Client Services Manager at Transition House. What I think the pandemic offered us was a way to view shelter differently. While the need for shelter increased, the pandemic lowered our capacity to 40%. As such, we could no longer depend on the shelter being one building. With the help of Northumberland County, along with both provincial and federal supports, we were able to continue to accommodate those in need in motels. At the beginning, we supported our clients to access shelter in up to 4 motels and raised our supports from 22 clients served at one time to up to 40. On average last year, we were able to provide 300 beds per month for those needing shelter. In a 6-month period, we were able to support 97 individuals with over 1,700 beds in motel. As we ventured out of our traditional shelter environment, we also partnered with community providers. Through our collaboration, we began to develop coordinated access in Northumberland County. This has been key in supporting our clients through the pandemic and the ever-changing landscape in housing. Coordinated access has begun as a centralized intake process that has allowed access to emergency housing for overflow of our reduced capacity shelter, isolation for symptomatic individuals, and community access to motel. Throughout the year, we have evolved and aligned in working with One Motel completely. This has been a very positive outcome for this work. We should highlight our very strong overflow partner, Studio One Motel, as they have worked with us to support our clients when we have not been able to be there physically. They also go out of their way to ensure our clients have access to the shelter and no one is left without access to supports in this time. Further support allowed us to provide outreach supports that included full case management. We completed individualized transition plans and goal setting with all clients. We connected them to the supports required to action those plans, and we followed up continuously to ensure the accountability to these outcomes. Due to this, we have had 4 overflow clients that were able to move into permanent housing and 2 were able to be diverted to other safe and stable housing. We also brought additional services of connections to healthcare by adding a community well-being worker. The opportunities that healthcare connections brought were overwhelming. Some of the successes we saw were enhanced ability to keep people healthy and safe in a pandemic, and the ability to have access to referrals, including psychological assessment, dental care, diabetes support, and medication review and access. Last year was a year of change. However, we, with the support of so many, have been able to alter services in order to continue to provide care for those who need it most. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Holly. A little bit of housekeeping here. Take a look at the lower right corner of your screen. You should find a chat box there where you can ask questions. We're going to have a Q&A session afterwards, so get your questions in so we'll be able to address them. Coming up next, we're going to turn back to Ann Newman to talk about new opportunities for knowledge mobilization and how we can use technology to support orientation at the shelter. Ann?
So the pandemic has offered a lot of silver linings in our services, and one of them has been about the integration of technology. So we at Transition House have had the opportunity to use technology to mobilize our services when there were lockdowns in the community. So we added outreach services, and in that, with technology, we were able to go out in the community and allow people to connect to physician appointments, assessments, obtain referrals to specialists. And we also had staff able to support people through appointments or support people with transportation to get to appointments. So that technology really opened up a lot for our clients when the world was closing down. In addition to that, we had a lot of donations of cell phones. Northumberland United Way donated funds for cell phones and also used cell phones. And we were able to connect clients that didn't have anywhere to go or any way to connect with anyone. So just with a Wi-Fi connection and some used cell phones, it made a huge difference in people's lives. The most exciting change was having healthcare services available right on site. So we were able to set up the technology and offer the space for clients to have a private room to attend appointments, whether they were to meet workers, attend court, or even specialist appointments online. So this has really changed the way that people have been able to access healthcare. You'll hear about it later in the presentation about how we've worked with other organizations to enhance that access further, but technology was definitely the very beginning of that enhancement.
Thank you, Ann. Our name is Transition House, and we do want to work towards more transitional housing, and we've had exciting new opportunities and successes there that Alora Candler is here to talk to us about. Alora?
Good evening, I'm Alora Candler. I'm our Transitional Housing Program Manager with Transition House, formerly known as the Next Step Program. So the Next Step Program was initially a COVID-funded project, and as we've moved through COVID, it has now become a part of Transition House. Our Next Step program was initially a COVID-funded project. As we've moved through COVID, it has now become a part of Transition House permanently. When the Next Step program was initially being created, We had a numerous amount of support and help through a variety of different agencies and organizations in Northumberland County. When individuals are looking for getting into the Next Step program, we do an application process, and we're looking for individuals that are mid to low acuity. So when they are filling out that application form, it'll be with another organization through our H-Court table, and then it would be passed on to me, and we would go through the process. When individuals enter into the program, it's an intensive case management program as well as semi-independent living. So we're not staffed 24/7. We have daily programming Monday through Friday that includes a variety of different things. We have a cooking program. We have numerous agencies that are, connecting with us and presenting to our clients. We work on budgeting, a variety of different things. So it really just depends on the program participants' needs and what their goals are. So it's really individualized to each participant. So that can look like if somebody doesn't know how to sew, then maybe a part of their programming is teaching them how to sew. Or if somebody needs help with their budgeting, then we're going to help them with budgeting. It really just depends on the individual needs. We also really focus on food security, whether that's through leading them to the food bank or helping them budget that their monthly groceries into what they can afford on top of their housing. As well as throughout the summer months, we have helped them navigate how to create their own food security through gardening. We really work on helping people get to that independent housing, or whether it's supportive housing, whatever their goal may be, and helping them learn how to maintain that housing once they're out of the program. So we really focus on getting individuals connected to the resources that they need, and that's going to help them after they've been housed. Through that, we've had 5 participants gain long-term housing and maintain that housing after being housed, and just keeping connections with them. So we have workers that will connect to them after they've been housed to check in, to make any referrals if needed, and to just make sure that they're doing okay. Through the program, we've seen that through the appropriate supports, individuals have regained access to their children, or they've gained the proper mental health supports or proper supports for addiction, and really just working through what they're needing. So we really focus on getting people connected and ensuring that we're staying in touch with them. That's all I have, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Alora. It's great to hear about some of those successes. We do want to hear more from people with lived and living experience, and so that's something that we are trying to do more of and design processes for better doing that. And somebody from our community who's helping us out with that is Alex McPhee. Alex, please tell us more about this process.
Hi, my name's Alex. I work for Northumberland Hills Hospital in the Community Mental Health Department as a peer support specialist. This is a role that I'm very passionate about. Peer support is founded on the ideas that people who have lived experience and have been through a mental health journey themselves are better suited to support people going through the same types of struggles. I have several years of experience in peer support, starting with working for the Peterborough Drug Strategy. And this is where I was a part of a group that wanted to share their mental health journeys or their stories of addiction and adversity with other youth in the hopes of education and being able to help just one person. In that role, I became a mentor where I was a Toastmaster and was able to share with that group and get new youth involved for how to tell their stories and be able to help other people as well. After that, I worked for Alderville First Nation as a healthy lifestyles outreach worker, and that's where a lot of my work began, with being able to coach people and work on goals. After I worked for the Canadian Mental Health Association as a peer support worker, where I did groups in wellness recovery action planning, coping skills, and also had a one-on-one caseload of people who we were getting connected with other community resources, with counseling, and with goal setting as well. I currently work for Northumberland Hills Hospital, and this was one of the most diverse peer support roles out of the ones I have experienced. We are able to work with anyone in the community who identifies they're looking to work on their mental wellness. We accept referrals from self-referrals, community referrals, and our most attended referrals are people who have recently attended the emergency department and are looking to have some check-in and some support after attending the emergency room for mental health concerns. We have many groups that we offer. We are a recovery college location, and we have chose to call our recovery college Teaching and Education Learn Through Living. In this program, we have many groups that focus on recreational groups, social groups, education groups, all with the wanting to have people more included in the community, and we're hoping that people will learn skills that will be able to help them with their mental wellness. So some of our favorite groups have been a paddleboarding and canoeing and kayaking group that we teamed up with the Coburg Dragon Boat and Canoe Club this summer, and we had over 30 individuals come out and paddle on Lake Ontario. Such a new experience for so many people who haven't had that experience before. Everyone, reported never getting to see what Coburg looks like from being in the lake. So that was a really interesting group. Some other groups that we do are like a TED Talk study, being virtual. People tune in, we watch a link together, and we discuss a TED Talk. We have Wellness Recovery Action Plan, which is teaching people the tools they can use to stay well, and crisis planning, and how to properly take your medications. So all some really good tools that a lot of people unfortunately just aren't taught. I've recently been working with Transition House to help Transition House be able to create a lived experience advisory panel. So this would be a group of people who are able to work at the board level and advise the board on decision making and policies from people who have lived experience and know what it's like to be in those positions. Often in peer support, we find we don't want anything about us to be created without us. So being able to have that peer voice embedded into policy making and decision is really where we're going to have more inclusive policy development. So being able to create the lived experience advisory panel will be crucial for Transition House being able to keep a peer voice inside all of their decision making policies. This summer, we had Anne and Alora come and join some of the groups that we were running in the park to be able to see what we offer in our peer support programs and how hopefully ideally they're able to offer when they have their peer support program up and running. They have tried to have peer support workers before, and that has been met with some challenges, as starting a peer support program is very difficult. There's many things to look at operationally, and I'm sure that soon they will have a peer support worker and be able to be facilitating and running a lot of programs similar to how we do. I feel like the pandemic has really created an isolated community where people have even less support than they've had before. And we know that when you're going through mental health struggles or addiction struggles, connection and help from your peers is such a crucial aspect to recovery and to getting better. And the pandemic has definitely made this difficult. So that has been a difficult field to navigate, but we have started a lot of virtual groups, and now knowing the procedures that are needed to keep everybody safe, we are able to meet again in person and to meet in outdoor spaces or to use masks, and that has been really helpful to get people in person again. So virtual provided us with a platform that was helpful to mend the bridges where people really were alone and isolated, but being in person and face to face is just a great way for people to be able to make connection and to get out again. Okay. Thanks so much for having me. It's been great to collaborate with Transition House as they explore this new role of having peer staff, peer workers, and creating a lived experience advisory panel. It's really motivating to see the work we're doing on the peer level here in Northumberland, and thank you for wanting to be a part of that.
Thank you so much, Alex. I think I can speak for the whole board in saying that this is one of the things that we are most excited about in growing in and moving forward on. Now, one of the things about being a shelter is that we tend to think a lot about shelter itself, but it's not the only foundational need that a person has. Food security is a critically important issue. And another member of our community, Adam Hudson, is here to tell us about that. Adam?
Hi there, my name is Adam Hudson, and I'm a registered dietitian at the Community Health Centres of Northumberland, and I'm part of the community team, which has had a big role with regards to what I'm speaking about tonight, and that is food insecurity in Northumberland over the course of the past 18 months or so. And my role as a dietitian traditionally is that my role is split between half clinical and half community. And in my clinical role, I educate, I see clients one-to-one, and I provide counseling and suggestions and nutrition education on how people can better themselves through healthy eating and address some of their clinical conditions. And on the community side of things is where I get to be a resource for the community, outreach, provide education skills, cooking skills, nutrition education, presentations to a number of different organizations, and really be a resource for this community. It's a job that I love, a job that I cannot believe I've been in a role for 10 years in this community. Time has flown by, and time has flown by even more so in the last 18 months with everything that has been going on. The Community Health Centres of Northumberland has long had a history in food security, and what's started as a very, very, very modest food cupboard, a literal food cupboard when we first opened in downtown Port Hope, and then transitioned to 99 Toronto Road in Port Hope. It was a cupboard, and it was started by our health promoter, Pam McDougall, who has been at the forefront of the food security movement. And as I mentioned, I joined 10 years ago, and together Pam and myself and the rest of the community team have been providing a number of different classes and educational opportunities for people to gain those food literacy skills. And food literacy is different from food security in that at the CHC, we believe that providing people with skills, education, and the tools and the strategies in how to learn to cook for themselves, to shop, to budget, and to have all those skills that need to go into having good eating habits. Now, unfortunately, over the last 18 months, a lot of those classes that are fixtures at the CHC, such as our collective kitchens, our men's cooking group, our super sisters, our cooking from a good food box, a number of great classes that has been focused around belonging, social wellness, education, skill building, has not been able to happen. So we have needed to shifted our role in the food security realm of delivering food and making food more accessible to people. In an ideal world, our food security side of things, by handing out food, our goal is that we would like to be out of business. We would not like the fact that people need to come and get food to survive for their week, or that people would no longer be in fear of where their next meal is coming from. But unfortunately, that needs a bigger systemic change in our society, in our community. But in the meantime, we have stepped up in huge ways to provide food for people in Northumberland who have needed it. And I'm not sure if it's known that before the pandemic, 1 in 8 Canadians were food insecure, which means that people were in fear of where their food is coming from and where their next meal would be coming from. Very quickly into the pandemic, that number went up into 1 in 7 individuals are food insecure. So it led to a number of pivoting events that we had to put into place in order for us to get food to people in this county. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, our health promoter, Pam, as I mentioned, she reached out to Transition House and offered an opportunity for us to provide a hot meal to their pop-up shelter that was held at CCI. And it was such a great collaboration, one, because Transition House was able to set up shop and have 30 plus beds and be able to adapt and provide that service for this community. And we were just very thankful that we were able to help and provide a hot meal to really provide people with some comforting, healthy, balanced meals that they could have at least once a week. And other organizations stepped up, and it was really kind of a neat project and support and partnership that we were able to be a part of. And since then, so much more has happened. We have been able to adapt our food security measures by changing to a drive-through service. We were doing deliveries with volunteers. We supported other organizations such as Greenwood Coalition and the ACT team from NHH and a number of different local motels and people living on the margins where they knew they could reach out to the community health center for a healthy food box that contains fresh produce and vegetables supplied by our farmer partners. And the funding that we were able to receive in order to do this was just absolutely phenomenal, and the support that we got from Northumberland County and the Food for All warehouse and United Way and the Community Food Centers of Canada. If there's been a blessing in this pandemic from our perspective, and it's really hard to pick out the fact that a blessing comes with the pandemic, is that it just shows how resilient this community is and how much people have come together to be able to support one another and really work as a team in the county to show that there are a lot of people doing good things. And when we work as a team, those services are going to be rolled out in this community. Another neat thing that we've been able to be a part of is the fact that even though we can't run classes in person and we can't have people in the building enjoying a meal together like our super time lunches or our drop-in meals or any of our educational classes, a lot of focus has still been on food literacy. And I know Transition House has done the same through their transitional housing program. I know Alora, shout out to Alora, has worked so hard at getting partnerships in with regards to a chef coming in and teaching some of the residents and clients on how to better their cooking skills. I've had the opportunity a few times to speak on nutrition education topics and what to focus on for healthy, balanced eating. And we've been able to send out little teaching moments and cards on things like what to do with beets or what to do with cabbage, and little tips and tricks that when we're sending out these foods, we're still able to enable those people who are receiving foods that might be unfamiliar with how to use these certain foods. And the partnerships have continued to grow. And another partnership that I really want to speak to is the Northumberland Eats Project, which is such a neat initiative with regards to gift certificates going out to people in need. And they're not so much gift certificates, but they're vouchers for independent businesses in town. So it's a full circle approach. Independent businesses are looking to support those in need. It allows money to go back into those independent businesses, and it allows people who are living on the margins or who are food insecure to have some dignity to be able to go out and buy themselves a meal or to be able to source certain foods that they might not be able to. It's a great partnership. It's had such a success in our community, and we're just thankful to be a partner of that project. Again, we've had many different partners who have supported us, and we just want to thank everyone, including Transition House, the county, United Way, and everyone else who has been part of this partnership of food insecurity in Northumberland County. This is a big, big, big issue, and it's not going to be fixed by one organization or over the course of a 12 to 18-month period. This pandemic has highlighted the gaps in service. Our numbers have gone through the roof. A number of different organizations have had higher needs. And I think that just highlights the amount of attention that needs to be given to food security. But with all the work that's been going on in the last 18 months, it shows that there's a number of different organizations willing to step up to the plate. And that's something I'm excited about. And hopefully, once everything kind of settles down and if we get back to normal, the idea of food insecurity or food security will maybe be put to the wayside and focus more on food literacy and building those skills so that people can live independently, confidently, with dignity, and with a focus on their health. So big thanks to Transition House for letting me speak to this topic tonight. This has been really, really a great partnership and a learning opportunity for me personally and for the CHC. And we will continue to roll out as many different projects to support people of this community moving forward. Thank you so much.
We're very grateful for all of Adam's work and for contributing that video, as he's unable to be here with us tonight. But Adam talked about food, Alex talked about togetherness and just human contact, and we've talked quite a bit about shelter, but wellness is more than the sum of its parts. So again, our executive director, Ann Newman, is going to talk to us for a few moments about wellness and why it's so important in our programs. Ann?
So One of the things I've been most excited about in our work at Transition House has been my personal interest in the collaboration between healthcare and social services. So historically, those two sectors can operate somewhat as a silo, and our clients are often jumping back and forth between both. So to have a seamless transition with hospital, healthcare, any type of dental work needed has been wonderful. At the beginning of the pandemic, we received funding from the Sisters of St. Joseph to begin a street nursing program. And that program evolved through support from Northumberland County as a formalized community well-being program. We now have a healthcare provider who travels around and assesses clients. We've had amazing screening and assessment in COVID for everyone. We've provided access to vaccines through clinics or transportation to clinics. We have implemented rapid antigen testing through that, but we've also connected people to dental, to diabetes support, and to nutrition support. The community health centers of Northumberland have been amazing, and so has the Northumberland Hills Hospital, as they have worked together with our community well-being staff to ensure that people have access to assessment, but also ongoing follow-up. I think we've noticed, and you will have seen on the Homelessness Hub if you follow that there is a definite connection between health and homelessness. Our clients and many homeless people across the country will experience unintentional injuries, disorders and chronic pain, hunger and nutrition, skin and foot problems, infectious diseases, dental problems, respiratory illnesses, and mental health issues. And we have been able to address those as some of the foundational needs being met before we can move on to the housing that is our main focus. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm also excited to see that this will continue as a part of Transition House's services and will continue to evolve as we work with our partners and our clients. Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you for that, Anne. One of the adjacent services that we have to have a really close relationship with at all times at Transition House is the Cobourg Police Service. We have a close partnership with them, and Janice McDonald is going to tell us a little bit more about that.
I am Sergeant Janice McDonald, and I am a frontline supervisor with the Cobourg Police Service. I had the pleasure of working with Constable Janet Bertrand this summer in a program called HARP, which is the Homelessness Addiction Resource Project. And the project really came to be simply based on observations that we saw around the town of Cobourg, that we thought homelessness was growing in our community, and we really wanted to approach it in a different way to hopefully connect the individuals with the resources to help make those initial building blocks to get them to successfully transition out of living, or successfully transition from living unsheltered to sheltered. The program really came to be out of some conversation that I had with my partner, Constable Janet Bertrand. We had really noticed that there had been an exponential increase from what we were seeing in terms of homelessness, specifically in and around Cobourg. And we thought perhaps over the course of the summer, when it unfortunately becomes the most visible, that we could do business differently in terms of how we go about supporting the individuals that we're interacting with on a day-to-day basis. In terms of HARP and the success that Janet and I experienced this summer, I would say the biggest piece that I think was missing is a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have a lot of trust or faith in police. I think we show up often when we're called for negative reasons. And I feel like the work that Janet and I did in connecting people and really setting aside the time to really engage with people and speak to them on a different level. We weren't necessarily there from an enforcement piece, but it was really just about getting to know them on a different level and for them to know that they could trust us. And what we said, we weren't using or looking to further our own gains, but we were really looking to further them and get them to know on a different level. It took us away from having to respond to calls for service in terms of always being tied to our radio and always rushing from call to call. It really gave us the time to be present for these individuals, which I think is something that's often missing in terms of their police interaction, and consistency, because they knew each day Janet and I would be out there, and we were often not in a car. We were just doing foot patrols. So I think that it broke down some of those barriers for individuals and let them to see us not as Sergeant McDonald or Constable Bertrand, but just Janice and Janet, and that's often how they address us, which is perfect. And it let us know that we were genuinely there to help them and make positive connections for them rather than from a negative perspective all the time. So I think that that was a really big positive for us, and I think it let them know that, you know, we were one place that they could come for support, and then we were really looking to connect them with the other service providers that perhaps because of their living circumstances, they weren't able to make those connections on their own. So I feel like that was a really big step in the right direction from a policing perspective. You know, I just think that also from a policing perspective, not only I think did Janet and I have the opportunity to give back to our community through HARP and the opportunities that were afforded to us by Chief Vandegraff, by allowing us to engage in HARP this summer. It took two full-time officers off the road, and we are solely dedicated to this project. But I also think it really opened our eyes to seeing that in order to combat homelessness and addiction and mental health and all the things that Janet and I really experienced firsthand this summer, is that, you know, we're not going to do it on our own. It has to be a united front through all, and I think through all community agencies that we're blessed to have in Cobourg. And I think that we really need to sort of embrace one another and see all the value that each one of our individual agencies bring to the table. And I think that's the only way that we're really going to achieve success in moving to better for the members of our community, is by really being a united front for people and finding out what is missing, and realizing that perhaps we as police or whatever agency might not be the best agency to provide that, but really knowing what our partners are doing and being able to connect them when in need with the right services. And I think that was really the one thing that I learned from HARP. You know, not only hopefully did we have value in the people that we help, but we got so much back even from the clients that we were engaging with, and sort of realized their day-to-day struggles are not maybe what we initially saw, but there's a lot more going on that I think we really can help them move to better.
We're very grateful for that video from Sergeant McDonald. Thank you, Janice. She unfortunately is not able to be here tonight, but it's so good to see Cobourg Police Services looking at doing policing differently, which is something that's important to all of us. So that's it for the formal presentations tonight, but we really want to engage with you, and so that makes this part really the star of the show. We have a list of questions that you've sent in. Thank you for that. And the panel here, we will be happily take more questions. So please continue to put questions into the chat box. The first question that I have is one for Anne. What is the biggest challenge in the transition house right now?
I would say one of the challenges now is sort of coming to the end of pandemic services. So we've been operating this way for a year and a half now, and the world is opening, but we are also in a position where we can't define ourselves by pandemic services. So we have to look at creative ways to sort of move back to our house. And we have to kind of rethink homelessness and how that is offered. As COVID funding ends in our community, we're going to see some changes in how we access emergency shelter. And I think the opportunities around that are around coordinated access. The county has really supported us in developing coordinated access within our community. And if we can work together through H-Court, through the Homelessness Leadership Table, and other community groups that are together, and not duplicate and put people in the right place at the right time. So as we sort of rethink our services, I also think we're gaining skill in that coordinated access, and I can see improvements and I can see the system coming together, and I really look forward to being leaders in that system.
Thank you for that, Anne. The next question is for Holly. It sounds like the motel overflow system is working and comprehensive. Well done. Is it your hope that this support can continue after the pandemic?
I think it will continue past the pandemic. There used to be an emergency motel program that's separate from the overflow program. And we recently took that over, and it used to be very successful. So it is my hope that that will continue to help the individuals that may need emergency shelter that aren't able to access shelter through the transition house emergency shelter.
Awesome. Thank you, Holly. Up next, we have a question for Alora. What do you mean by mid to low acuity?
Yeah, so when we say mid to low acuity, we're really discussing mid to low risk individuals that are ready to take that step into long-term housing, whether that's independent or supportive living, whatever that individual needs.
Thank you. Another question for you, Laura. Next Step sounds like a great transition program. Do you take people from the transition house shelter, and how many people are in the Next Steps home?
So we currently have 5 beds. That is the maximum. We're currently full. We take, what I've seen is individuals coming through shelter and into the transitional housing program, but that doesn't other individuals. So there's an individual in the community that our community agencies or community partners feel is ready for the Next Step program, as long as they are presented on the by name list through H Court, then
we may have lost Alora there. Sorry about that. Another challenge of the COVID age. I have a question here for Sarah. Why do you count homeless people, and how often do you do it?
That's a really good question. So currently we do it because the province have mandated that for every 2 years, they want every municipal government, every service manager, Northumberland is the service manager for this area, to look to ensure that we're aware of what the needs are of the homeless people in our area, people experiencing homelessness, you know, what services are working well, what isn't working well. And the way that they've determined that we do that is we choose one date, and on that date, we talk to everybody we can find who is experiencing homelessness. So yes, it is a count, but it's more than a count. It's about talking with people, engaging with them, seeing where they're getting services from, what would help. We talk to them about the level of need, and Alora just spoke about this, about low and medium acuity. So what we use is something called a VI SPDAT, which is a prioritization tool. It's an assessment tool. We all use the same one, and then we're able to work from that to see where people's level and skills are, where they are in terms of their housing journey, where they are in terms of what services are going to support them most. So she's absolutely right, working with low to medium scored people. We're also interested in people that score much higher and what services they need. So every 2 years now, we choose one date and we go out and we talk to as many people experiencing homelessness as possible. Our latest count was last week, and I can let you know that we had interviewers out across the county. We were in 6 of the 7 municipalities. We had routes that included food banks, parks, beaches, motels, hostels, homeless shelters. We went to libraries, we went to community meals, community halls, everywhere that people might be. Even Tim Hortons, McDonald's, different diners. We went right across the county for the full day and spoke to as many people as we can so that we can get as much information as possible to ensure that our services really do meet the needs of the people experiencing homelessness. So that's why we do it.
Wonderful answer. Thank you for that, Sarah. I have another one for you. Can you tell us if Northumberland Eats is a COVID response, or will it continue on?
Oh, that's another great question. It was absolutely a response to COVID. It was a way when we had lockdown, when there weren't many places for people to go. And when we heard about it earlier, it was very much about win-win-win. It was about how we can invest some of our resources back into the community. We knew that many of our local restaurateurs and food providers were really suffering because of lockdown. And they weren't able to provide business in the way that they were used to. So we wanted to be able to ensure that food security remained a priority, and a way of doing that was ensuring the dollars that we had to invest on food security were invested back into our local community. So it was a response to COVID. However, there's absolutely, it's going to continue. We've been able to invest in it quite heavily over the last sort of 10 months and work together with United Way, who will be taking it on next year, and it will be an ongoing program. They've already had one day this year where they did a fundraising for it, were able to raise several $1,000s, which they've invested back into the program. And the beauty of it is that even a couple of our local restaurateurs invest in it as well. It really has taken off. It gives people the opportunity to choose where they eat, when they eat, if they want to buy something healthy, local, if they want to buy something that's a food ingredient rather than a ready meal. And as I said, it invests with local businesses. So yes, it will continue.
That's really exciting and really highlights what we were talking about from the beginning about how some of the things we've had to do quickly as pivots have turned out to just be a new and better direction. So I'm excited for that. I have a few comments here. Someone says, wow, thanks for your passion, Adam, and kudos to the Coburg Police. So thank you to our presenters who were not here. Glad to see that they are appreciated. I have two back-to-back questions now for Chantel. The first reads, I have a passion for child welfare. We know that 40% of young people between the ages of 18 to 25 who are homeless were in child welfare. Do you experience this in the shelter, or do you deal with it from a different age demographic?
So in the shelter, we are, as I mentioned before, serving individuals that are 18 and above. I think we see a pretty vast majority of people and people that come from different backgrounds. So to say that, you know, we're seeing people from the child welfare background, that does happen, but I don't think I could give a percentage on what we see there.
Okay, thank you. And while you're here, do you anticipate going back to full capacity in the shelter?
That's a really great question. At this point, we really don't know where the pandemic will lead us or when it will end. As the world reopens, congregate settings are not. So we are working as a leadership team and continue to do some planning on creative solutions. So.
Thank you for that, Chantel. Yes, that is definitely something that the board is talking about right now. A question for Anne. What can I do as a community member to support your work? Love that.
Money? Just kidding.
Well, just kidding, but not kidding.
Well, you know.
It helps.
You know what? Right now, my goal is to create friends, to create people who are interested in supporting us in this journey on enhancing coordinated access. It's about changing the dialogue so that we are seen as a solution in our community. It's sort of reframing why we're here and how we need to be here. And it is my hope that moving past this pandemic, when we're able to get to talking about something else, that we are able to share more hope, positive stories, positive community impact, and wherever there are challenges, we can work together in a solution-focused manner to come together and create the community where all of us are able to contribute and all of us are accepted for whatever economic position we end up being in. And I also say one thing always, to remember that when we live with addiction or mental health, it is not a choice. This is something that is a struggle. And to see people from the perspective of us all having a story and us all having a journey, and having respect for that and starting there would be really helpful for Transition House and the whole community at large.
Thank you for that, Anne. That's great. And I'll add in a thought of my own here, just that one thing I'm really grateful for in the new community safety and well-being plan is the emphasis on community well-being, this idea that we are all part of the solution, because we are, well, I recently had the phrase come to mind that we are all the frontline workers of each other's lives. So being open to being there for other people, being open to hearing other people's stories, to catching ourselves when we might think the worst of someone rather than the best. Those little things add up to a lot on the scale of an entire community. So that's absolutely something that all of us can be doing. I have here a comment. This is excellent, as the community does not hear or see all this positive action and initiatives of Transition House, puts a positive and engaging vision for homelessness and Transition House and their clients. So thank you to whoever wrote that one in. Where on the housing continuum do you see Transition House sitting? And this one is for you. Is there a shift to more transitional housing than emergency shelter in the future?
I think if you look at the housing continuum, you'll see emergency shelter and transitional housing sort of together, and then you'll see supportive housing as the next step. I would say our community is showing a gap in the supportive housing area. We are not experts in supportive housing. We are experts, we think we are, in low barrier emergency shelter. We are experts and leaders in the housing system. But when we get into supportive housing, there might be some other specialties or expertise that people are able to provide. So transitional housing became a next step. And I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, when all of this change was presented, the world was closing down, and Sarah Tanner, who you're seeing right here, said, this might actually provide an opportunity to disrupt homelessness just a bit, and maybe just provide some creative solutions to get us through this. And that little pilot turned into something beautiful that we wanted, but maybe we didn't anticipate it would be that wonderful that quickly. And it quickly became part of who we are. But that's not to say that that gap is still in our community, where there are some people that are not necessarily ready to jump from an emergency low barrier shelter to independent living, or even to a transitional housing situation. So I would really like to see that added to the options in our community. And I really hope that another result of our work together in this pandemic ends up with that as a solution.
Yeah, to further that point, I really appreciate that it's described as a spectrum, because it really does take a full spectrum of supports in order to serve the community. And I'm excited that Northumberland was recently, we are now a Built for Zero community. Is that right, Sarah? Do you want to talk for just a moment about that?
Absolutely. The Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, who work right across Canada, have a Built for Zero campaign, which is about ending chronic homelessness. And they have certain standards that we have to meet, and work that we do in supporting people through our by name list. That's where we ensure that we're allocating services to those who need them most. We're allocating services that are appropriate for people's needs. We're able to report that. We're able to work in partnership. We're able to bring people together and identify where we have resources and how we share them. And the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness have built this model from some of the very, very successful work in the States looking at ending chronic homelessness. And as Jeff just said, We are one of the, I think it's 26 communities now across Canada that have achieved full membership of Built for Zero Canada. This means that we have access to a different range of training and learning materials. We've now been allocated a coach and a mentor that can help us with our systems. We're able to get together with other communities that are achieving the sort of things that we're beginning to achieve. We are a very small community compared to some of them. We have a smaller population, but the work we're doing is really beginning to be very effective. It's beginning to be embedded in people's policies, different agencies. So yes, we are now a full member of Built for Zero. Thanks for reminding me of that, Jeff.
Yeah, because ultimately we're all trying to work ourselves out of a job. And I think Adam mentioned that as well. There will always be a need for support for people when they are down on their luck, but ending chronic homelessness and making sure that there are places to transition to are our goals as we move forward. I have another question here for Alex. Are there opportunities for organizations to connect or reach out for more info on partnerships with peer support through NHH?
Oh, absolutely. Please send me an email or even just call our main line and ask for the peer support extension, and they can put you through. Leave me a voicemail. I'd love to connect to other community resources, to doing more peer support in Northumberland. I think that's a fantastic opportunity for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. That also is something that we are really hoping to see more of, is a growing awareness of the importance of making sure that people with lived and living experience are heard and engaged and included at every level. I have here, not sure, but if possible, this video would be available on your website. Ongoing, people allow access to many people. Yes, we definitely want to make sure that this video is being recorded and it will be available for distribution. So that should be up sometime in the next few days. I have another comment here. Thanks for an informative presentation. Well, thank you also very much for coming. If there are more questions, we'll hang out for a few more minutes. I definitely don't want to cut anybody off, but we did drop a lot of information on you in a short time. So please feel free to let us know if you have any questions. In the meantime, Anne, do you have anything else you want to add to what you've seen tonight, or anything that it's spurred in you? Do you have any questions for Sarah?
I question her every day, actually. No, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for the people who contributed to this tonight, those that work with us and those that are not working at Transition House but continue to support us and be there for us, and the county. I mean, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the county. And Sarah has, she's been working with this board since we began in 2018 when Chantel and Holly were there starting with her. And she's really supported us through this entire pandemic. And I am really proud to work here because we haven't shut our doors once since that day opened. The staff you see here work 24/7, and they really care about the work they do, and they make it all happen. And to be working with a team like this is inspiring. And I really hope to continue with these types of positive conversations, and I hope to add more people into the future. So thank you for that.
Jeff, I'd just like to make a comment while you're just waiting to see if there's any more questions. I think it's really important to acknowledge the fact that what Anne has just said. In my role in the county, I support a range of organisations. I work across homelessness, health, food security, community safety and well-being. We manage a lot of different programs out there. We work with a lot of different organisations. I'm involved in many different networks and different projects and programs. However, during COVID, you're absolutely right. All of this is about who could pivot, who could do something there and then to keep things open for the most vulnerable people in our community. And I have to say, Transition House is one of the very few organisations that didn't go to a work from home model, that didn't step away and reduce hours, that didn't make criteria for service a lot more difficult. And I absolutely understand why agencies did do that. It's by no means a criticism. However, it is a reflection of Transition House's role in this community, that it remained open. It found solutions for every barrier that was put up in front of them, whether it was social distancing. Oh my goodness, you've got to move to the school. Oh, you've got 24 hours to do that. Move staff, move clients, move everything you need, set it up, get it functioning, every policy and procedure, follow public health guidance, follow fire procedure, everything you had to do. Yep, get it done, thank you. And then, oh no, you've got to move back. Yep, you've got 12 hours for that one because the school are coming back now. You know, and it's just been constant. Transition House has pivoted every time. Anne mentioned earlier the vaccine clinics. Absolutely phenomenal to actually be able to reach out to people who perhaps aren't engaging in other ways, don't have healthcare providers or regular healthcare providers, you know, are not able, perhaps don't have a health card, all sorts of challenges. But no, bringing that service to them, bringing dental care right to where people are at, all through COVID. And I think that really is very admirable, and we forget that. And I am aware that very often in the community, these are the things, as one of the listeners has said, that people don't know about. People don't know that Transition House never stopped a single service. Never, ever were they closed. Never did they not do what they're here to do. The staff are phenomenal. The leadership is amazing, and it's still there. And you are still working with some of the most difficult situations. You don't have lots of resources. You don't have lots of support sometimes in the community as well, because quite often Transition House is seen as the place where actually that's where the challenge is, when actually we should start to say, no, that's where the solution is. And I guess that's what I've been working on, the actual coordinated access through one professional player like Transition House has really changed things for a pandemic. I have to tell you, because I hear from colleagues across the province, not everywhere has been able to do that. So it's really, really wonderful that we've had this opportunity to say all this out loud, to pat each other on the back and start to feel quite proud, because I don't think we get that option very often. And I know Anne's always talking so positively about her staff. Wherever she goes, she tells everybody what phenomenal staff she's got. But I think it's good to say that out in public as well now, and actually tell people, you know what would have happened if Transition House wasn't there?
Yeah. Thank you for that, Sarah. I really appreciate that.
For next week, when we tell you what would have happened if we weren't here.
I have a comment here that says, kudos to Northumberland County to recognize that homelessness is not just an urban issue, but also a rural issue. Good on you. 3 exclamation points, and I couldn't agree more. We had mentioned, someone asked earlier, what they could do to help. And we did mention that donation, and we did it kind of tongue-in-cheek, but let's not be tongue-in-cheek for a minute. We get the majority of our funding from Northumberland County, and we do get money, emergency funding, as Sarah had mentioned, due to COVID, and we access as many grants as possible. But we are still always fundraising. We have an active fundraising committee, and we make very good use of money. Anne and her team are very good at making sure they get every ounce of utility out of every penny. And so if you are able to donate or participate in a fundraising campaign or something like that, please do reach out to us. We do have a donate link on our website. Also, in terms of volunteering, obviously due to COVID protocols and other protocols, volunteering at the shelter is a non-starter right now, but our board is always looking for feedback from the community. We want to be able to think strategically about the role of Transition House in the community. A lot of the questions that came in tonight were about what is Transition House going to do next, or what kind of services are going to change or stick around. And a lot of what we're going to do in the future will depend on how we can understand where we are now and what is needed in the future. And so if you have any feedback to contribute, that is incredibly valuable as well. So I have no more questions that have come in Alex wanted to say something else. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I just wanted to follow up on that, on the same question of how can people help. And through my experience with Northumberland Hills Hospital, we have looked for communities members to step up and to want to have a role and a say in some of our programming, and to go even farther than that, but to have people facilitate stuff with us. So under the fact that we run groups for educational, social, recreational. If you have a hobby, if you have a skill you want to share, you can share it afternoons, where we brought everybody the supplies. They all logged on to Zoom on a Zoom link, and we had an art instructor talk us through, how to do a paint night. And some of our clients were so excited about this because they've heard about paint night before, but that was never something they were able to afford. And then because we had volunteers and people step up in the community, we were able to give them this experience. So, don't think like we can, I got a lot of ideas of how we can make volunteering happen, even with Transition House down the road in a virtual format as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Alex. Apologize, I had a little blip with my own camera there. But, thank you everyone for coming, all of our panel participants, Sarah and the county, for our moderator who's helping us keep all of the tech stuff straight in spite of my misclick there. And thank you so much to everyone who came tonight. Really appreciate you being here, and we would love to connect with you further. You can always reach out to me or to the board. Our contact info is on the website. Thank you all and have an excellent evening.